Does this sound familiar? You spent a lot of time over the weekend finding the perfect activities for your literacy centers. You've prepped your centers, got them all laid out and ready for your students. Your small group instruction block begins and you send your students off to their centers while a few of them settle in at your table to work with you on a targeted lesson. And then chaos ensues. You are interrupted because someone needs a pencil. Then someone needs to go to the restroom. Then, well, you get the picture. Planning and prepping your centers may have you thinking that nothing could go wrong. But the reality is, planning and prepping will only get you so far. In today's video, I'm going to share with you some tips for making sure your literacy center rotations are running smoothly. Stay tuned. What's kicking, educational rock stars? Welcome back to another episode of Teaching Made Easy. I'm the Center Fairy, your ultimate source into the wonderful world of simple classroom systems that actually work so that you can finally get back to what you love, teaching. If this is your first time joining me here on the channel, be sure you hit that like and that subscribe button and click that bell so that you get notified when I go live or upload a new video here on the channel. I'm so excited to share these tips with you today. I know they're going to help you get your literacy centers running like a well-oiled machine. Now, tip number one, routines are key. In order for your centers to run smoothly, you have to set up routines. One of the basic routines you need is a way for your students to rotate through centers. Some teachers choose to have students go through centers and then just pull students as needed. However, this often leads to students being unable to finish center work, and when students are constantly up and down during the small group time, it can lead to off-task behavior problems. My suggestion is to set up your centers in a circle around your room. Then have students rotate clockwise or counterclockwise around the room. Now, in order to meet with your students, you are one of these centers. This means that every rotation, there will be students at your table, and you will be able to meet with each student each day. Other routines you should have in place involve how students will operate during centers, things like going to the bathroom, getting supplies, or things that may come up. You need to have a system in place for these common occurrences during your small group instruction. Now, tip number two, choose the right centers. Typically in my classroom, I had 5 center rotations, with one of these being my small group table. Then in each center, there were activities for the students to complete during that 10 to 15 minute rotation. However, these weren't just any games or activities I could find. For a long time, I would spend each week searching for activities to put in my centers. I would spend so much time prepping them, and then when it came time for my students to work, they just couldn't seem to do them independently. This led to many interruptions at my table. Then I developed my Easy Centers framework, and in doing so, I created center activities that followed simple patterns and similar styles so that my students knew the basics of each game or activity. Then I would simply change the skill. This cut down on interruptions and the dreaded, how do I do this, at my teacher table. In our year-long Math and Literacy Center bundles for K through 5, you'll find 10 to 20 different style games that repeat themselves throughout the month. These skills change, but the basics of the activities stay the same. This means that students learn the games and complete them on their own because they aren't having to learn a whole new set of directions each time. Now, tip number 3 is use a rotation board, then ditch it. You heard me right. Along with tip number 1, this is a routine that your students need to know in their sleep. In the beginning of the year, I start out with my board displayed prominently at the front of the classroom. Then, as the first few weeks progressed and my students learned the routine, it became unnecessary for it to be displayed. Because I had my students starting in the same spot each day and moving in the same direction during rotations, they didn't need the board. I usually kept a smaller version of the board at my table and in my sub notebook in case I had to be gone or needed to glance at it to know where certain groups of students were in the rotation. Tip number 4 is to be organized. I know this may seem like a duh tip, but the reality is that when I go into classrooms to coach teachers, I find that their center activities are not organized efficiently. And I'm not talking about the ones that students are going to be working on. I'm talking about the ones that are in the wings waiting to be used or have already been used in centers. Having your centers prepped and ready ahead of time can cut down on the time you spend each week switching out centers or changing them last minute when the need arises. I like to have my centers prepped for the entire month so that I can switch them out easily with little time. Most of the time, on a Friday afternoon, I would pull my box for the month, switch out the centers for the next week, tidy up the used centers, and place them back in the monthly box. all in about 10 or 15 minutes before leaving for the weekend. By the end of the year, I had a whole year's of centers prepped and organized so that the following years were easy and planning centers was a breeze. To help you get your literacy center organized for the upcoming school year, I have a free guide to organizing your math and literacy centers that you can grab by clicking the link in the show notes. This guide is going to give you a step-by-step easy way to organize your math and literacy centers along with some of my favorite simple tools to get the job done. I've even included some cute labels for your containers so you can easily see which box is for which month. Just click that link in the show notes and grab this free guide and get started. Now, whatever model you follow for small group instruction, one of the biggest struggles is managing the rest of the class. But if you follow these ideas for literacy centers, your stations will just about run themselves so that you can focus where you're needed most, your small groups. Now, if you're looking for more tips, strategies, and simple systems to take back into your classroom to make your teacher life easier, check out the videos on your screen. Thanks for watching. XOXO, keep being an educational rock star.